So welcome everybody, thank you for coming tonight. This is our first Facebook Live version, so whoever's watching online, I'm going to try to stay in the camera, but if I disappear, you'll still be able to hear me. So tonight's class is a brand new class. I actually just put the finishing touches on it just a few minutes ago, but it is called Health Reform and Self-Reform. So I want to paint a picture for you because I couldn't find the pictures I wanted online. So how many of you have known someone who has ended up in a nursing home, in a wheelchair, maybe on oxygen, that needed help just to get around and do their daily activities? And if you haven't known that person, you can picture what that looks like, right? How many of you have known someone of a similar age or potentially even older that's still living on their own, doing everything by themselves, live in their own house, taking care of themselves completely? So what might be the difference between person A and person B?
Their life choices.
Their life choices. So I have an exact example of this in my own life. My two grandmothers, one of them is still with us, one of them unfortunately is not. But one was the first example. She went into a nursing home years ago. She unfortunately ended up with some dementia and Alzheimer's and didn't really remember who anybody was. And then there's my other grandmother who I just saw when we were in New York 2 weekends ago. And while I was there, fun part of the story, she said, well, you know, go up in the garage. My grandfather passed away a year or two ago. Said go up in the garage and, you know, pick out some tools, because one of the things I loved doing growing up is he taught me how to build things and do a lot of stuff. So in the process of going through the tools, I noticed some power tools. So of course I'm going to go for the power tools, right? They might be power tools that are older than me, but they're going to last forever. So I grabbed a couple of these power tools, and I'm thinking, you know, she's probably not using any of this stuff anymore. It's going to be great. It was a belt sander. I don't have a belt sander, so I thought that'd be great. So I bring it back into the house, and she's looking through. She's like, oh, I see you went for some power tools. Well, I'm going to need that belt sander for a project I'm doing next week. She's 87 or 89 years old and she needs a belt sander. Holy moly. So clearly one of them made better lifestyle choices along the way than the other. And it's not the fault of either one for the choices that they made, because they did what they thought was best with the information they were given. So tonight we're going to take a look at the overall state of health that we have right now. And my goal and my hope with every single class that we do is to help shift the paradigm of where we think health is to what health actually is. So when we take a look at that, the state of health right now is that the United States makes up less than 5% of the world's population, yet we consume 75% of all the pharmaceutical drugs in the entire world. So hopefully that shocks somebody. Hopefully you see that as a problem, because it's a huge problem. If we make up 5% of the world and we take 75% of the drugs, that either means we're doing something really, really right and we should absolutely be the healthiest people in the world, or maybe not. The average U.S. citizen spends about $10,000 a year on health care. That's with insurance coverage, taking care of and covering things. So that's pretty big. Has anyone sat down and figured out that they spend about that much on health care? So I sat down during this whole change in health care coverage and insurance and things like that, and said, well, what does my plan actually cover? And funny thing, I saw this research. I have to literally spend $10,000 before my plan covers the first thing. Between my deductibles and out-of-pockets and all those things, they know this stuff already. So they know that I'm paying all this money for this health care, and probably I'm never going to hit anything that they're actually going to pay anything out of pocket for. So, interesting. And the U.S. is ranked dead last compared to every other developed country in the world. So something isn't working right. Something is clearly wrong. We take the most medications. We have the most surgeries across the board. Some surgeries are absolutely life-saving and necessary and have to happen. But we have the highest medical expense across the board. We take the most medication, yet we have the least amount of health across all levels of the scale. And this isn't from some random magazine. This is actually out of the World Health Organization and the National Institute of Health and Disease, which the name's not quite right, but it's close. And the problem is we're in a system that is exactly like this triangle. And if you don't believe me, look up some documentaries like Doctored, or I just saw Vaxxed over the weekend. It's important to see, no matter what your healthcare choices are, go see the movie. There's a lot of great information in there. But basically what happens is up here we have our government, over here we have our food and FDA, and over here we have most of the pharmaceutical companies. And the reason why there's this little triangle is if you don't think the system is rigged, then you haven't woken up yet. Because when someone moves from the Food and Drug Administration, they all of a sudden are in charge of one of the drug companies. And then all of a sudden they're in charge of something in the government. And then when they don't do that in a little while, they come back over here. So one of the examples that reminded me of this was actually in that Vaxxed film. As a quick side note, myself and a couple other Local chiropractors are working on getting another showing at the theater in Norfolk, so we're going to buy out a whole bunch of seats. Whoever wants to go can go. We're working on that. But they actually had someone who approved one of the medications, and since it was about vaccines. Every single vaccine that gets approved, that company knows they're making at least $30 billion off of it. So maybe there's some motivation to come up with more vaccines. And they approved it. They went through the whole process, and all of a sudden this person gets this big cushy job as the CEO of the vaccine company. So if you don't think the system's rigged, there's something going on. A lot of our healthcare, unfortunately, is more motivated to make the companies money than to get us healthy. And that's not true for a lot of the doctors that are out there. I know it's not true for Dr. Deborah. I know it's not true for me. We actually want to see our patients get healthy and get better, not to keep them on that same role of having all those drugs and all that medication that's not fixing the problem, but just prolonging the issue itself. So the World Health Organization themselves actually states that 70 to 80% of all disease in the entire world is a direct result of us trying to prevent it in the first place. How does that make you feel? It's a problem, right? The programs, the systems that are in place to stop us from getting sick are causing 70 to 80% of all the sickness and disease. Any guesses on why you think that might be happening?
Side effects.
Side effects are one of them, absolutely.
And then you take a pill to fix that side effect.
And it's actually true that more people in the United States die every year from medical errors. That's properly prescribed medication taken the right way that kills people. That's the improper medication. That's the surgeries that don't go the right way. That's all the stuff across the board. Or, as a story I just recently heard, it was in that movie I just saw, but it was twins, and they were there for their shots. They had the shots lined up, and one of the twins had a little fit, like little kids often do, and the mom looked back and 2 of the needles were gone. And the mom said, well, where'd the other needle go? And she said, oh my goodness, I gave your little infant son 2 doses of the same vaccine. That person ended up having some challenges through life, and I'm not going to give it all away because, like I said, go see the movie. But anyway, so medical errors alone, which people are apt to do the right thing, but people make mistakes. They account for more causes of death than anything else. Heart disease by itself makes up about 600,000 people a year claimed by heart disease, and that beats that by a lot. The conservative numbers are anywhere between 1.1 upwards of 2 or 3 million people every single year die because of a medical error along the way. So maybe there's a little something not right with the system or things that can be improved upon it. And the awesome thing is, in the research I was doing to really put the extra stuff on this class today, a lot of the medical schools, a lot of the journals, a lot of the associations out there are picking up on this and doing the things to start to change it. But it takes a long time to turn the tide of something that's been going in the direction for a long time. So we're moving in the right path, but it's going to take us some time to get there. So what are we doing wrong? So this is where we have to come and take a look at what I call the difference of the paradigm, so the thought process of where we're coming from. So directly off of, I don't remember what website I got it from today, but this is the definition of what the medical paradigm is. It's a model of illness that excludes physiological and social factors and includes biological factors in an attempt to understand a person's medical illness or disorder. See, that's a good idea, right? But why would we exclude social factors and physiological factors? So that's basically the things that people are choosing to do for themselves. Maybe that's a challenge. Or to put it a different way, one of the more common things that's taught is that on a whole, like I said, not every doctor that's out there, but on a whole, we're taught that the body is made incorrectly and it needs something to be healthy because we look at it from a state of illness, or we look at it as a state of lack instead of a state of surplus. So in contrast to that, the chiropractic paradigm, which I paraphrased a little bit because it was about a 6-page paper and I turned it into one sentence, is a model of health that includes the body's innate recuperative power that is affected by the function of the nervous system. So what are 2 words that are different that are pretty important there? I highlighted them to make it easier to see. So one's focus is illness and one's focus is health. Have you heard that if you look for something, you find it? So if the main goal is to find the illness, to find the problem, right? So again, nothing wrong with the thought process of it itself. That saved my life. When I was an infant, I was about to die of pneumonia. And of course, I wouldn't be here if that happened, and it was medical doctors who saved me. I have multiple medical doctors in my family. They are wonderful people. They do a lot of great things. I know a lot of awesome doctors. We take care of a lot of them. But when the paradigm's goal is to look at illness and not look at the potential for health, then we're going to end up with a society like we have right now, where 75% of the medication in the world is taken by 5% of the world, where we are the least healthy of any developed country that there is. So, like I said, the shift is happening. They're starting to try to change this process, but it takes a long time to turn around a tanker ship. It's not something you can do right away. So when we take a look at it, we're actually going to look at one of my favorite pictures. It's the degeneration of the spine. And one version is going to be how it's typically looked at to treat from one side of the paradigm, and the other is the other side of the paradigm. So you might remember this from early on when you first started care. This is one of the things we go over with everyone, and it's the process that happens when your spine isn't properly taken care of. So when we look at the spine, just to back up, just to get everybody back on the same page, this is a picture of your neck from the side. So this would be the front of your head and the back. So there should be a nice smooth curve, which is about a 45 to 60 degree curve. And medical science has proven that the strongest weight-bearing structure to build with a curve, such as a bridge or a dam, is a 45 to 60 degree curve. It's not a coincidence we have the same exact curves built into our spine. So we look at the structure itself just to kind of get a refresher. The white part is the bone or the vertebrae, which our entire central nervous system, our brain and spinal cord, is surrounded by bone to protect its vital importance. The black spaces are those discs or those shock absorbers that are there to help take the impacts of falls and the stress of gravity. And the black holes in the back, if you remember way back to your second day, every one of you put your finger inside the spine. That's actually where those nerves come out. So if that joint moves out of place, there's less space for the nerves to come out. It puts pressure on it, things can't work right. But if we learn to take care of our spine properly from birth, it's actually designed to last in excess of 100 years, or actually 125 years with zero signs of breakdown. What's unfortunately common is in our society, is we're taught to worry about the symptom more than we're taught to worry about the cause. And we're not often potentially given a solution to fix the cause. So while we don't actually realize we have a different option, we could go from a normal to a phase 1. And what do you notice is different between normal and phase 1? There's no curve, so it's straight. So a straight neck equals what we call in chiropractic a subluxated neck, or a joint that's physically moved out of its proper location. When we're in phase 1, this is something that we can do two things for. When we look at it from the paradigm of illness, there are zero symptoms here. So what are we going to do from that paradigm if the person feels healthy?
Nothing.
We're going to do absolutely nothing, right? Because there's no symptoms, so we can't do anything. There's nothing to treat. But from the other side of it, even though there's no symptom, this is still a problem. Every single subluxation cuts 60% or more of that nerve function, that vital force flowing through our body to communicate. That 60% is already gone without any symptoms. So even in phase 1, whereas from the paradigm of help, we can actually remove that subluxation and restore that person back to complete normal health with as little as a couple of months. But what do most of us do if we feel healthy?
Nothing.
We do nothing, right? Because that's what we're taught to do. We're taught if we are healthy, then if we feel healthy, we are healthy. We know that's not true when you talk about things like heart disease and cancer, but that's still how we live our lives in our society because that's what we're taught. So we end up choosing our way over to phase 2. And what do you see is different between phase 1 and phase 2? So you picked it out exactly. So the spaces are actually starting to compress. Those disc spaces are actually starting to degenerate. So by the time we've gotten to phase 2, again, we're going to look at the two different paradigm models. Most people in phase 2 have pain or symptoms for somewhere between 3 and 5 days. So if we have pain for a few days, what is typically the treatment that we're going to get for that? Anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxers, maybe cortisone shots, maybe sometimes, I've heard of it. So it's going to be things that are going to help that person feel better, which is absolutely something that's noble to do. But if all you're doing is helping the person feel better, then we're going to continue on the path because by treating a symptom, you're never treating the cause. The other version of that, again, is we say, okay, even though you've only had pain for a couple of days, most people, again, are going to jump to that quick fix that's going to take care of it in a few days. And let me back up a little bit. Most of the time, what happens if you go to the doctor and they give you a pain reliever, a muscle relaxer, something like that? When do they tell you to come back?
Go see the doctor. Oh,
come back in a week if it still hurts. Right. Come back in a week if it still hurts. So if we know that it goes away in 3 to 5 days for most people, it's going to be better. But it doesn't mean it's fixed. So going to the other side of that paradigm, we also know when we're looking at phase 2, this is 15 to 20 years of breakdown in the spine. This isn't something that just happened. It's not something that just showed up. That means this person has had dysfunction, disease inside their body for 15 to 20 years before the first symptom even shows up. So this can actually be mostly fixed within about 2 to 3 years. Takes a little bit longer, but it took 15 to 20 years to get here, so it's going to take us a little bit of time to turn it around. But even when we're here, we might not be able to fix all of it because we've waited 15 or 20 years of breakdown of health in our spine. So we can certainly restore the normal curve relatively easily, but where the discs are broken down, that might be something that even when that person feels amazing, when they have no pain, when they feel more vibrant than they did when they were in their teens or 20s, they're still going to have a broken down disc on the inside. But if we choose to just treat the symptom again, what's going to happen?
It's going to continue to break down.
So we end up down here in phase 3. 25, 30, 40 years of breakdown in the spine. So by the time we've gotten to phase 3, in this office, this is typically someone who's been through multiple rounds of pain management, maybe physical therapy, maybe even had surgery that didn't fix it. Now, if any of those things helped the problem, then it was the right approach. But if it didn't fix it or it came back, it's not the right approach. So does anyone know, on average, someone who has a fusion of this joint in their neck, what it's going to cost? So the average fusion of a neck is a little bit less than the low back. It's around $250,000. So think about, the average person spends about $10,000, unless they have all this breakdown in their spine, and it costs about $250,000, upwards of $1 million+, depending on how much time the rehab takes to happen. A research article came out earlier this year that they went from the very first spinal surgery, or fusion, not spinal surgery, but fusion that was done 30 years ago till now. They looked at the outcome assessment of all of it and said, how many people did it help? How many people are better or no different, and how many people are worse? What they found is there is zero benefit in the long run to those fusions, because all it's doing is taking a joint that's already fusing and just holding it in place. One of the things that astounds me when it comes especially to spinal fusions, and I still don't understand, is it's going to be fused exactly in this position. It's not going to be put back in a healthy or normal position. It's going to be fused in the dysfunctional position it's already been in for decades. And we've seen some pretty crazy things like the wrong level fuse and things like that, and I hate to see that. But even so, even if it's someone who's had that spine fuse, there's a lot of work we can do. But once we're here, we waited too long. We can't fix everything. So the one paradigm is let's treat the symptom and help it feel better, which is great. And we want people to feel better. There's no reason to go through life suffering and being in pain. There's no need for that. We're not designed for that. But that is ultimately going to progress to be getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and maybe end up in one of those surgeries that's going to cost anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million+ to not fix, but try to intervene and do something about the problem. The other version is we can start to clean that mess up. So, like I said, we can never fix this, and nobody can ever fix that. But we can certainly stop the progress or slow it down at the very least, which is better than more drugs and more surgeons aren't fixing it. It might help feel better, but it's not going to fix it. So the goal of what we do is to fix the problem, not the symptom. Because if you're treating a symptom and stop treating the symptom, what happens? Does it go away? Does it come back? It comes back. Well, if you fix the cause of the problem, what tends to happen? So who has kids with braces? Right? Or who's had braces along the way? While you have those braces, everything's great. But what happens after the fact if you don't keep up with the maintenance and wear the retainers?
Stuff moves.
Yeah, I've had braces twice. I paid for them the second time myself. I learned my lesson. Because I didn't do the things needed to keep all that great work my parents paid for. Dr. Ashley did the same thing. So we told Dee Dee's daughter, she's got braces, we said, make sure you wear your retainers because you're paying for it the second time.
You get that right.
But in truth, we're never going to fix that, but we can certainly slow it down. Maybe we can reverse some of it, but as far as a joint that's fused together that's taken decades to get that way, even on the day, again, that person feels amazing. It's still going to be broken down, it's still going to be degenerated on the inside because we can't fix it. So when we take a look at that shift, or making that shift, that conscious decision to do something else, there's always an opportunity to do something else. Because the number one cause of death in the world, any guesses? It is. It's lack of knowledge. It's ignorance. And it's not ignorance in the way that many of us have been on. Ignorance itself has negative connotations to it. And it's not the negative connotation of the ignorance, it's simply not knowing there's another opportunity, and not knowing there's another choice. So the number one cause of death in the world is ignorance to better choices, to better health style choices. Because every single person, every single cell in our bodies has an opportunity to do one of two things. And it's all related to our choice. Every single choice we make either gets us closer to death or it gets us closer to life. There is no in-between. There is no cell, there is no living thing that has the opportunity to just kind of hang out in the middle and go, well, I have 50% bad stuff for me and 50% good stuff for me, so I'm going to hang out at 50%. It doesn't work. Everything is either moving closer to us getting sicker, less healthy, and ultimately die, or everything is moving towards us having a more vibrant, healthy life as, again, ultimately we die. We only live for so long. But those two options, think back to that story or the picture that we came in the beginning. Do you want to be that person who is in the wheelchair, on the oxygen tanks, needs help, can't remember who anyone is? Or do you want to be the person who tells me I can't take the power tools because they have a project to do? Right? That's a really clear decision. And we have an opportunity to make that decision, and it's literally never too late to make that choice, whether it's for you, whether it's for someone you know. We always encourage people to bring guests to classes because you guys being here, I'm already kind of speaking to the choir, and if anybody jumped in on our first live Facebook, maybe I'm not speaking totally to the choir, but if you're already here, you're already engaging and doing something different. Our body has a miraculous ability to fix itself on the inside. Myself, Dr. Ashley, as chiropractors, we do very little to actually help you get healthy. The only thing we do is remove the pressure, remove the subluxation. Your body does the rest of it. That's the same for Dr. Paul, animal chiropractor, so if you have animals, go see him. Anyway, so it's removing that subluxation, because what that subluxation actually does is instantly cut 60% of that nerve function, which if we have brand new cells every 9 months, they're either going to be made at that 40% level of health, or they have the opportunity to be made healthy. The choice is completely yours. The choice is completely yours to share this information with somebody else. Because which version of life is better? Again, think back to that same picture. One didn't know to make those better choices, was ignorant of those better choices, and ended up living at 40% or less of health, where one of the last times I actually saw her, she thought I was my dad and didn't understand why her dad didn't come visit her anymore. Or do you want to be the person that, I say it jokingly, tells me I can't take the belt sander, but really because she still lives in this beautiful, like, 4-bedroom house with an apartment and a detached garage that's probably twice the size of my house, all these things, she's managing it all completely on her own because she knew along the way to make better lifestyle choices in the first place. So most of her choices were over on this side of the scale as opposed to over on this side of the scale. So which one do you prefer for yourself? Right, it's easy. If you say this side, that's a different kind of doctor. I don't do that. But really, you have an opportunity to not just make those better choices for yourself, but for everyone you know. Because if you're already here, you already are taking the steps. But every single one of us know people who are not taking those steps, who are not doing that for whatever the reason could be. They might be afraid of the idea of getting adjusted. I met a gentleman over the weekend at the farmer's market and said, oh, my brother sees a chiropractor, he tells me about that neck popping and cracking thing, and I don't need that. You should have seen this guy. He was like this. His head was way forward. He definitely was phase 2 or phase 3 of degeneration. But he chose to make that choice in life because he didn't know there was another option. Will he ever show up here? I have no idea. But I took the opportunity to have that conversation and potentially open that door for him to make a different choice instead of his spine continuing to break down, continuing to degenerate, continuing to have all the problems he has. And we have that choice to make for every person we know. Because you might be the only person that knows them that has an opportunity to share some of this with them. So one of my favorite chiropractic sayings by one of the founders of chiropractic is, if not you, then who, and if not now, then when. So if someone came to mind, if you have a friend, a family member, a loved one, whether they live here or they live halfway across the world, I don't care where they live, the fact is that every single person that's alive on this planet needs to be under chiropractic care. Or at least at the very minimum needs to have their spine checked. Because chiropractors are the only ones that are trained to remove that subluxation and restore that vital communication. And if you do not have that vital communication, it means that you do not have the healthy and abundant life you're designed to have. So if every single person doesn't get checked, then they don't know that they might be missing out on 60% of their life. So that means your entire family needs to be here. It means everyone you know should be here to at least get checked. The awesome thing about our office, not the only one, but one of them, is that the opportunity to get checked, as all of you know, is our gift. We give that away to sit down with you to say, is there even a chance that you might have the life-robbing subluxations that are destroying 60% of your health, regardless of how you feel? And if we find you have them, we let you know exactly what we need to do. So for anybody on the fence, they don't have to spend a penny. All they have to do is take a little bit of time to find out if we might potentially be able to help. And we talk about the rest of that. So think about that 1 or 100 people that you thought of. Share with them. Like I said, if they're here, great. Send them here. If they live someplace else in the country, great. Tell me, I'll find them a chiropractor, because it's that important that every single person make sure their nervous system is working exactly the way it's designed to. So thank you very much. Have an awesome night. Hopefully Facebook Live worked. And next week is insomnia. I might get the title wrong, but it's Secrets to Better Sleep, something like that. So if you ever suffer from insomnia or know people who do, you have to be here next week to learn how to not just sleep better, but when you sleep better, you heal better, your body works better. So again, better life, better health choices.